Hello and a very warm welcome to the late breaking F1 podcast presented by Harry Eade, Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking. Today reviewing whatever the hell that was. They're calling it the Brazilian Grand Prix. Apparently, a Brazilian Grand Prix won from 17th on the grid by Max Verstappen and, as expected, joined on the podium by both Alpine drivers.
Sure.
Where do we start with that, Sam?
I mean, it certainly was a Grand Prix. We certainly did the Formula One today, didn't we? That happened. Cars went round the track and we got 69 laps.
Nice.
Thanks.
I'm not saying it again.
I just had to get it in there early.
I mean, Lance Stroll did try to not make us have a race. He gave it a good go.
We'll get onto that because what a moment that was.
He gave it a good go. I've just realised there was a qualifying session this morning. That was today.
This has been the longest day of all time.
I feel like I've been in Brazil for the entirety of my life.
I am now Brazilian.
Naturally, we have quite a lot to get through on this podcast. So apologies in advance if we don't get to your favourite driver, favourite team, a particular moment that happened, because there is so much. We are bound to at least miss something. But we'll do our absolute best to at least keep some structure to this review. But that does remain to be seen. We've got all the favourites, of course. Moment of the race is coming up. We're going to review our bold predictions. We've got driver of the day, worst driver of the day. We're going to be looking at some of the incidents that caused penalties out there. Russell versus Norris, which was a battle for a long part in this Grand Prix. But we should, of course, start with Max Verstappen, who was on the back foot coming out of qualifying. It was already known that he was going to drop 5 places due to needing to take an extra component. But, of course, if you're starting somewhere near the front, the impact of that isn't too large, but he doesn't make it through to Q3. We'll talk a bit more on qualifying later on, but he starts this Grand Prix in 17th place. Expectations, unexpected, but he manages to get all the way to first place, obviously using the conditions to his advantage. Sam, how impressed were you with what Verstappen was able to do?
You know, when you react to so many things in such a short space of time, you kind of just don't have the ability to form facial expressions or make the correct sounds anymore. But inside, I was so impressed with what he was able to do. It was mind-blowingly good. And now a lot of people while I was live streaming were kind of, he was helped by the safety car. He was helped by the red flag. Yeah, he was. But on a race weekend as calamitous and disastrous and chaotic as what we've just seen, you'd be stupid not to try and cause your strategy to have a safety car or a red flag or something play into your hands. So to bear that in mind, on a normal race weekend, you might think, hang on, maybe there's a 30% chance a safety car comes out. In this Brazilian Grand Prix, there is maybe a 95% chance that we saw either a safety car or a red flag. We got 5 in qualifying alone. We were definitely going to see at least 1 at some point throughout this Grand Prix. But it wasn't just the red flag that kind of saved him, if I'm going to use, the other's words. He got himself in the right place when it counted. Up 4 places on lap 1, a phenomenal start to his Grand Prix, past the likes of Hamilton with ease, gets himself back into the points, and kind of the onslaught of positions only really comes to a stop when he finally meets a car that seemingly has real pace, and that is the sister car of Tsunoda, who is causing a queue back where he has to kind of sit behind the likes of Tsunoda, he has to sit around with the likes of Ocon, and he has to be there with Leclerc as well. And he buys his time. Leclerc pits, he gets through, and he plays every condition, every decision, every moment to perfection. Not like something that Norris and Russell did. You heard the outburst from Russell when he didn't pit over the radio. I told you we should have stayed out on the VSC. It's fuming over the radio was George Russell. Max Verstappen called it brilliantly, and it shows you the level of expertise, the kind of forward thinking that he can have and that team can have, and why making these difficult decisions in such cutthroat conditions pays off for you. He played himself perfectly into having the opportunity where he could go on to lead the race and, of course, go on to win it by 20 seconds. Formidable. It was an absolutely brilliant performance throughout, and I think he conquered every condition as it came at him in a brilliant manner.
Harry, it's not the first time we've seen Verstappen excel in these sorts of conditions, but we know that Red Bull hasn't been operating on the level that it was earlier this season. Of course, this is his first victory since the Spanish Grand Prix. How impressed were you by his performance?
I know we sometimes are in danger on this podcast of being a bit hyperbolic with what we say.
No.
But
sure.
His start alone is outrageous. Just his start, just his lap 1 is. I've had 7 showers since I watched it, and I'm still dirty.
That curve to soul move,
Filth.
the sun shines out of his backside. Curve to soul, backside to soul, because obviously that was sublime the way he went around the outside.
Backside to soul is not a phrase we're making up. No.
No.
But that alone, and I mean, he makes a mockery of the 3 people immediately in front of him off the start. It's like he's in a different league. They're in F2 cars. But as you say, he was so calm into turn 1, and then, as you said, it through turn 3, covered a soul. Just did his 2016 line like no one's remembered that's a thing. He's like, I've done this, but I've shown you this works, and no one's paying attention. That alone I was impressed with, but he's just so good in the wet, isn't he? I know we speak about Hamilton and Verstappen; they're very good, and Hamilton, his skills are clear in the wet, but Verstappen is, maybe it's particularly just around this circuit, but he's just so confident. Like, he's just way more confident than anyone else in finding the grip. So, yeah, on a day where the points gap could have swung the other way for him, it would have been a day very easy for Verstappen to get tangled up, get frustrated, and not score any points. But he didn't, and he just can't. He was quick, but did it with a calmness that befits a 3 times, almost 4 times world champion. And I've got to say as well, a shout out to GP, who never really gets enough love. But GP, I think, might be the best race engineer in F1 because he's just so methodical and so calm with Verstappen.
It's the partnership as well, like
exactly
being the opposite of Verstappen.
Exactly. Without GP, I'm not taking away anything from Verstappen for today, but without GP, I think Verstappen is a lesser driver. And we saw it in the sprint yesterday, talking about his game plan. We saw it again today when he's behind Ocon for a chunk when the race resumes, and GP's like, look, Sainz has just gone off. It can go wrong so easily. The restart happens, and Verstappen's P1, Lando's off the track, and he's in P7. I mean, that alone proves the point of GP and the worth of GP. So, I know Red Bull have lost a lot of people, but they're not losing GP, and I think that's a worthy signing or re-signing there. So, but yeah, Verstappen, that's up there with his best ever drive. If not, maybe it is his best ever drive.
I mean, a lot of words, a lot of phrases will be said about this performance, about this Grand Prix, and rightfully so. But if I can summarize what I viewed the race as in one line, it was the best driver in F1 proving he's the best driver in F1. Simply put, there isn't someone on his level. As great as there are drivers in F1, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, there are so many brilliant drivers in this sport. Verstappen in these conditions just shows that he's that one level higher. You're right. The first lap was flawless. Like that, you couldn't have painted a better first lap than what was delivered. The approach into turn 1 was spot on. He gets a great start in the first instance. The approach to turn 1 is brilliant because he could very easily have lost his race at that point. He's tentative. And then he uses turn 2 and turn 3 to his advantage to then make the overtakes. You're right, the move around the outside of those, 37 cars, it felt like. Phenomenal.
It's still going.
Utterly phenomenal. And the fact that Norris and Russell, obviously with these conditions, they're able to pull a gap on the rest of the field. But Verstappen is still picking up fastest laps whenever he's overtaken a car and he has a little bit of room to work with. He's making an overtake, at least for the first 10 laps, pretty much at an average pace of 1 per lap until the point, as you say, he gets stuck behind the likes of Tsunoda, Ocon and Leclerc. But until then, he really was... Into turn 1, it felt like there was a braking zone and a Verstappen braking zone. Like they were 2 different things. Every driver would have to hit the brakes at a certain point, and Verstappen can say, right, I can go an extra 20 meters than that because of the confidence that he had in those conditions. That was phenomenal. I agree with your read, Sam, on the safety car because, yes, it makes sense to build a safety car into your strategy here because conditions, it makes sense. But the point is, Verstappen still benefited anyway, even if that safety car didn't come out. We know that a few drivers, including Verstappen's teammate Perez, went onto the wet compound. I'm pretty convinced that that advantage would have dried up within a couple of laps. We knew that better conditions were coming. And the likes of Charles Leclerc, they were struggling to make their way through the field. So actually, I think they were absolutely right to stay out. And that includes the Alpine drivers, obviously. Verstappen was right to stay out. And then the overtake on the likes of Ocon later. I know it was on an Alpine, but it was clinical. It was what it was. You never felt like he was in danger with any of the overtakes.
It's a pressurized move, right? He still had to make a move for the lead on a wet track. We've seen enough crashes, and a mistake was easy for many drivers to make there. Absolutely flawless from him.
As mentioned, I think this was simply a case of the best driver in F1 proving he's the best driver in F1. I apologise for my British bias there leaking out.
Yeah, Max Verstappen, famously born in
Sunderland.
Sure. He's a Mackham now. It's also something that was pointing out is that with this win, Max Verstappen has broken Fernando Alonso's record for the most wins from different grid positions. He's now hit 10 different grid positions. First, obviously, second, third, fourth, sixth, seventh, ninth, 10th, 14th, and now 17th, where he has won a race from, and that topples Alonso's previous record. So that is, Max Verstappen is inevitable at the moment.
We'll keep to fairly short answers on this one, as I think it might be a discussion that we have midweek anyway. But Harry, championship over?
Yeah.
62 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tough before we came into the weekend, and we'd said this before. Norris needed some luck. He was chipping away at it with some of these results, again with the sprint yesterday, but chipping away at 2 points a time. You got 3 points in the end or something like that, but it was never going to be enough. What you need to not do is chip the other way, unchip. Which he did today, and actually lost points. Unless Verstappen has a disastrous final couple of races, then it's not happening. It's done.
I agree with you. Going into this race, obviously, Norris on pole, and you've got Verstappen in 17th. And to say at that point, Verstappen's not only going to win the race, but he's going to claim an 18-point advantage on the day over his rival, Lando Norris. I think this is it done. And in a way, if this is very conclusive, I'm almost glad that this is the type of race where it becomes conclusive, because it was based on the excellence of one driver, not a collision, not some controversy with the FIA. If this is what we would deem the decider, it's happened because of the brilliance of Verstappen rather than anything else, which I'm quite pleased about in a way. Sam, over?
I think so. I did state on the live stream that if Verstappen manages to get to about 8th or 7th maybe, and Norris wins to the fastest lap, it really is actually on at that point, because the gap has come to under 30 points. So within 3 races, it's definitely closable. But, the fact that we've now got over 60 points is the gap. We've got a sprint involved in it, but I just can't see it changing around. He'd have to have one of the worst 3 races of a driver I think I've ever seen in a championship fight for this to topple. Fair play to Verstappen. Got the job done so early on in the season that he might actually win it before the last race of the season now is very impressive. So I think I think it's game over for Norris.
Alpine, coming into this weekend, had a grand total of 16 points.
I can't believe it.
And they were 9th in the Constructors' Championship. They walk away from this weekend in 6th place in the Constructors' Championship with 49 points. To put that in the terms of percentages, over 2/3 of Alpine's points this season happened today. Ocon in 2nd, Gasly in 3rd. We know Ocon had a fairly good qualifying. He was on the second row of the grid. Gasly, similar to Verstappen, all the way from 15th up to the podium. Sam, how important is this result for Alpine, and how impressed were you by both of them?
I mean, forget sausages, forget bacon. Ollie Oaks has gone into the kitchen. He's cooking a full fry-up. The man is feeding the 5,000 at the moment. What a performance from Alpine, and on both ends of the spectrum, because they had to move Gasly forward, and at the same time they had to solidify the brilliant work that Ocon did in qualifying earlier on in the day. And we've said quite a few times in recent races that Gasly's been driving out of his skin. His qualifying performances have allowed him to make the difference when it comes to the race results. It's not like Ocon's been slow in the races, but because his Saturday, in this case Sunday, performances have not been up to the same standard, he's missing out on points. But this time, it's almost like they got the perfect balance there. Ocon qualified well, maintained his pace. Gasly got caught out by that unfortunate red flag that happened and meant that actually he had to come forward. But the strategy got played in so brilliantly. They absolutely changed the game with how they thought through this race. Alpine have done something so well, so the only natural next step is, of course, to fire Hollyoaks and give the position to someone else, because that's just what Alpine do. I imagine there'll be a mass firing and they'll do something else in a moment.
They won't know how to react to this or fight everyone.
Driver's gone.
Retire.
Hollyoaks is gone.
Nico Rosberg 2016-esque. They'll just leave.
Nico Rosberg F1 because he'll buy it probably. But no, they were sublime, and it is amazing how quickly, especially down that end of the Formula One Championship, things can change. We've been talking the last 3 or 4 Grand Prix since Singapore. Haas or RB, Haas or RB, Haas or RB. We've been saying, how Haas have been chipping away. They look like the favourites. RB coming back into form, and they looked okay today. They had Sinoga and Lawson in the points. They were doing well, scoring well. Hello, Alpine are here. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. It's our house now. You can leave. We're in 6th. We are the 6th place team now. And they've snatched it away from them. Now, the points are still close, but it's a 3-horse race. And if Gasly and Ocon can keep doing what essentially Gasly has been doing in previous, more standard, normal Grand Prix, I'm amazed that Alpine could genuinely take 6th place and are not the favourites for it, but they're also not the underdogs. There's a fighting chance that they are well in with a chance now of holding on to 6th from the last 3 Grand Prix. A brilliant turnaround. We'll never have called it. But as bold predictions go, I don't think we have ever have called this. So yeah, mine was blown. Well done to Alpine.
You know that meme where it's that person's like reaching out to something like a sphere, and
yes.
on the sphere it says P6, and the person is Haas in this case, and then they look behind them and it's just Alpine like
pulling them
away from it at the last minute.
A sweat drop on their forehead.
See, I had a different meme in mind. You know, the one where they're sat in like a church or something and they've each got a gun on each other, and it's actually Haas at the front thinking they've got P6, but then RB's going to take it from them. But then Williams is going to take it from them. And there's a sniper Alpine just like, I've got you all covered. By my maths, 5 points separate those 3 teams now. So that could be a very interesting conclusion to the season. I tell you what, Harry, the Alpine car, let's face it hasn't been there for most of this season. But you've got to be encouraged by this lineup going into next year after what you've seen.
Meg's favourite joke.
It's not a joke, mate. It's a serious point. You can't get rid of this quality lineup with a double podium.
Why would you? I can't think of one good reason.
Yeah, especially as you wouldn't send one of them off to the team you've just beat into P6 now, would you? That would be stupid.
I'm sorry, I've got some news for you.
Oh, breaking news?
Ocon's not going to be driving for them next year. He's out of a drive. They fired him.
So Ocon decided to leave to join
No. Alpine have fired Ocon. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't believe that. Can't be right. That's illogical. I don't. How have they done that?
Valid question. Yeah.
No, look, Alpine in the wet, they're good again, apparently. So we must only have wet races for Alpine's sake. It's look, Ocon was brilliant in qualifying. I know Gasly had a trickier time, but Gasly was then great in the race. He, like Verstappen, benefited slightly more from the safety car, but you got to be in it to win it, and they both were, and they kept out of trouble in a way that there aren't many drivers out there today who didn't fall off the road at least once. Verstappen, Ocon, Gasly, that might be it. The top 3 might be it.
Yeah.
I genuinely, I think we might have had a replay of at least one other. Every driver have one incident today, so a deserved top 3 because they were the ones that kept their themselves out of trouble. So I can't believe they've managed it. I actually was looking at the podium and I was like, oh, Verstappen on there. And I was like, it just looks weird.
All their flags are the same too.
I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, especially the horizontal in the middle and the 2 verse. It was like a little house. It was great.
Yeah, that really satisfied something in me. But yeah, it just fair play to both drivers who made them look. The Alpine is suddenly not a great car. They've just made the difference in tricky conditions and kept their noses clean. As you say, Ben, both of them proving how good they are for a lineup. So don't do anything to change that Alpine. That would be silly.
No.
Honestly, I have been banging the drum for years on Esteban Ocon is a good driver. And apparently Alpine haven't listened to that. But hey, when things are somewhat equalized and we're in these conditions and car performance isn't as important, both himself and Pierre Gasly demonstrate the quality of that team, that lineup. It's a great lineup. You're absolutely right, Harry, to identify that not only did they have good pace, they just didn't make any errors on a weekend where pretty much everyone else did. We've had multiple drivers crash multiple cars on the same day.
Oh.
And yet these two have avoided really any errors whatsoever in terms of small lockups and detours that were the norm for other guys. Esteban Ocon was phenomenal. Of course, his qualifying effort was brilliant in the first instance. He's then how he was able to extend an advantage on Max Verstappen when he was on intermediate tyres when, let's face it, for a couple of laps, that was not the right tyre to be on. Again, made no error whatsoever, built a gap. The only thing you can say is, could he have defended the inside line from Verstappen into turn one? Maybe, but I'm not convinced it would have made much difference. Gasly does a phenomenal job. It's not his fault that he's eliminated in Q2. He gets unlucky with the timing of the flag, so he has some work to do. Again, he does a brilliant job. This is a great lineup. They've done a wonderful job today. And for Alpine, this is why we say, when it comes to midfield and back marker teams, you've got to be on it every weekend because you never know when this sort of race is just around the corner. Like you can do, as Haas have done, as RB have done, pick up points here and there, just wherever you can. And that's what you have to do. But there is inevitably once a season, maybe twice a season, going to be this type of race where more points become available to you, whether it's 10 points or in this instance, as much as 33 points for a constructor. You never know when it's coming. That's why you've always got to be ready for it. And Alpine were today, and they deserve full respect because if they end up finishing sixth, they can do so knowing that they haven't had the sixth fastest car this season.
Valtteri Bottas is literally crying inside his helmet right now.
Did he at least get 11th?
No.
Didn't Perez get 11th?
No, he did. Yeah, you're right.
And I think Bearman's in front of him as well, so he's 13th. So if both the Mercedes do get DSQ'd, he will still only finish 11th place. He's trying so hard.
That's how he gets back to Mercedes as a reserve driver. He convinces the stewards not to disqualify them.
Oh, that'll be it. That's the contract negotiation sorted.
Okay, let's take a break on this episode. On the other side, we've got more chat about George Russell, Lando Norris, plenty more. Welcome back, everyone. Front row of the grid was Lando Norris and George Russell, but they were the other way round as we went into turn one. Eventually, again, we'll get to the start procedure shortly. Russell and Norris, as Tsunoda dropped back, quickly became the battle for the lead. It looked like first and second was going to be the duel between those two until the end. Safety car comes out. Both of them take advantage of the safety car going onto more intermediate tyres, which of course was then followed by a red flag, which means they missed out on the opportunity for a cheap stop in the same way that Verstappen and the two Alpines did. Russell, at least, again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in terms of those decisions to be made by the stewards. Finishes fourth on track. Lando Norris makes an error on the restart and eventually finishes in sixth when Oscar Piastri lets him by. A lot to unpack, Sam, but those two drivers, how did you view their race?
Yeah, we'll talk about them separately. Russell, I think, at the start especially, really impressed me. The way he got off the line, that second phase of the start procedure was crazy. He kind of almost looked like he had the jump put on him by Norris. And then out of nowhere, he seems to hit a grippy spot or the tyres start to kick in for him and he just excels past Lando Norris. And not only does he excel past Lando Norris, he holds on comfortably to that race lead. It looked like for a good few laps, he was at least 2 seconds plus clear of Lando Norris. And it did start to come down as kind of Norris found his footing and began to feel more comfortable in the race. But even then, Norris felt like he was never really getting past George Russell all the way up to that VSC moment. It was a brilliant defense, strong drive. But then if you're going to paint almost like a graph of Norris's race in terms of how good he was, he started right at the top and it was kind of flatlined, which is good. And then all of a sudden, at the moment that VSC red flag moment hit, it dropped. And we started to see pressure. We started to see mistakes. We started to see issues with George Russell. He made a couple of mistakes. He's run wide a couple of times. I would argue he rejoined the track unsafely at least once throughout this Grand Prix, but no penalties were given throughout the entire Grand Prix for unsafe rejoining to a single driver, although only Leclerc was investigating for this. But his racing was always clean. And then he gets back to kind of that front fight and he's fighting with Gasly. But I think he does well to recover to fourth. It's a shame he can't get past Gasly, but we've said how well Gasly is driven. Defends like does a brilliant job defending. Comes home in fourth place. For that Mercedes, I think a fourth place, if you were to say to Russell, without any other context, you qualified second, you're going to finish fourth. How do you feel that way? I'm sure he'd go, yeah, okay. With how the car's been, not perfect, but not the end of the world. Lando Norris, on the other hand, you start first, you lose the lead again immediately before the end of lap one. You fall off the track at key moments throughout the Grand Prix. You are no idea what's going on with the strategy. Pit me. The team are going, no, we're not going to pit you. No, we're seeing evidence that it's not worth pitting. We're not going to pit you. Coming under VSC because they follow Russell in. Screws him over again. And then restart happens. He runs wide off the track. Has to have Piastri let him come through again. Can't get back through at all after that either. It's just a big sliding downhill moment for Lando Norris. And this has almost been the season itself. You know, every chance there's a moment where Norris could assert himself in this championship fight. Every chance he would have to take a step towards battling with Verstappen, he has proven that he just hasn't got it right now. He just isn't at that level yet to grab hold of an opportunity and go on to potentially win or at least challenge for a championship. This was in his hands. This is the perfect opportunity for any racing driver who is wanting a fight in a championship to go, I'm first, my rival is 17th. Surely I've got to best them in points. And I feel like it shows again a real level of not being there to make this many mistakes and fall this far down the order. He should have at least been second. If Verstappen's winning that race, Norris should have been second. Everything should have gone his way. And yet through his own doing, I feel, didn't. So yeah, a really gutting weekend for Norris, and it's on him that it hasn't gone his way for the championship.
Harry, what did you make of the two drivers that started on the front row?
Yeah, I thought I think Russell did everything he could, because I don't think that Mercedes, we saw in the hands of Lewis Hamilton, I didn't think the Mercedes was actually very good around here, and the fact that he was P2 was pretty impressive from qualifying this morning, and then his start, as you say, Sam, was equally as impressive, and then yeah, he was unlucky, as was Norris, in terms of their call and where the safety car came out. With that now, I'm torn because they're doing what you would deem to be the
default strategy, right?
Sure.
Yeah. But like what you would deem to be the right call. There's more rain coming. You want the fresher tyres. But now it happens so often now in modern Formula One that if there's a heavy rain shower coming, more often than not, we're going to get at least a safety car or a red flag. And so a lot of drivers are hedging their bets on that. And I'm not criticising those that did, like Verstappen, etc., for staying out, because it was the right call, obviously. But I just don't know if it doesn't quite sit well with me that you get reward, like the likes of Yuki Tsunoda, who came in and put the wet tyres on because that's the appropriate tyre for the conditions. You get punished for it. Anyway, separate topic for a separate time.
Hindsight's 2020 in that situation, right?
It is, but what I mean is those that have come in are doing it because they're putting on the right tyres for the right conditions, but those that are staying out are just banking on the fact that in modern F1 we can't actually ever run with a wet tyre because it gets too... the visibility is too much.
It's a fair point.
Anyway, yeah, so Russell was unlucky, but I think where he ended up was probably about where that car was. It probably was quicker than the Alpines, and they're an exception, but yeah, I thought he was pretty impressive, and versus his teammate, very good. Norris, yeah, the start was, again, an issue for him, which has been I know it's been better as of late, but been the story of his season. And he obviously, it was tough to overtake, unless your name was Max Verstappen, apparently. It was quite tough to overtake out there today. And that was proved by Norris. But on that restart, he just, I think everything got slightly too much, because he fell off a couple of times, and that is the pressure of a championship fight getting to his head a little bit, I think. And that's not even, I'm not even saying that as a criticism, because it's natural. You look at, a Lewis Hamilton in 2007 or 8. I'm not saying they're quite the same journey in their career, but when you're fighting for your first championship, mistakes like that happen. So yeah, it just went downhill from there, and I think it got to him. And then the second restart where he went straight on, he didn't get a good restart, and he was caught out by Russell, who was being passed by Leclerc, and all went wrong from there. And then that was it. It was afternoon done. So it's a disappointing one. And on paper, turning a P1 to a P6 that's not good. That's like Ferrari Charles Leclerc territory. That's how bad it was.
From George Russell's perspective, I want to start with him. And I'm not quite sure what the best way to phrase this is, but it was, I think, the fourth best race of the season so far. Like, obviously, the attention is going to go to Verstappen and to the Alpine drivers. I thought George Russell was phenomenal. I think he did a really good job. Of course, he's up against Lando Norris. He does a good job of holding him off for a long time. We know that Mercedes, whilst it's not slow, it also isn't quick. So the fact that he's able to lead this Grand Prix is impressive. And then, of course, the only drivers that he's beaten by today are based on strategy. Now, there's a chance that Verstappen beats him anyway. I'm not sure about the Alpine drivers. And as you say, Harry, like late on, it was really only Verstappen that was able to make any overtakes. The last part of this Grand Prix, unless the driver was making an unforced error, they were mostly staying in position. And I don't really hold it against Russell that he couldn't make any progress up from fourth. I think he did a phenomenal job. Lando Norris, I think, Sam, you hit the nail on the head when you said that this kind of encapsulates his season in that he had very good pace yet again. But in those few critical moments, it's not quite there. Obviously, the start is a critical element. He didn't get either of them right for different reasons, but for the second one, at least, it's not a long run to turn one. Like, it's one of the shortest runs on the grid, and yet he gives up that position. And then, of course, on the restart again, there's pressure there as well. So really good pace, but in this sort of Grand Prix, it is going to be those few critical mistakes that are going to cost you, and that's what's happened with Norris today. But yeah, I wanted to give Russell some credit because I think he did a very good job, and it was an entertaining battle for the lead. That start, let's just focus on that for a moment. We don't yet know what the outcome of it is going to be. We know that Lando Norris is under investigation for it. That was announced first. And then George Russell and 2 RB drivers were also pulled into that. Essentially, Lance Stroll, after crashing on the formation lap, the start was aborted. Lando Norris and McLaren, one or the other, maybe both of them, misunderstood exactly what that meant. He goes off to do another formation lap. A few other cars follow. Everyone eventually follows, but some of them go after they're instructed to, which isn't exactly what was meant by the aborted start. The intention was that they were going to stay on the grid for another 10 minutes before they clean that up. Did you have a read on this, Sam, in terms of what should happen, what did happen?
Oh, gosh, it feels like a really confusing scenario of events. The phrase aborting start is a tricky one, and I understand how the language in a very high-pressure environment needs to be very much understood by the teams. It is on the teams, on the radios, I think, to make sure that they're communicating really clearly with their drivers what a certain phrase in the rule book means. If you say aborted start, you need to come straight over that radio and goes, aborted start means stay there. We're coming out to, pick up the tires and we're going to redo the car. You need to be straight on that radio, letting your team know. But obviously there was poor communication. The lights were flashing orange, and when the lights flash orange, it's the same as a double wave yellow. Lando Norris sets off, and then the rest of the front 4 or 5 kick off very quickly right behind him. Now, for me, Lando Norris has broken the rules, as has Tsunoda, as has Ocon, as has Lawson in that scenario, who I think it was.
I don't think Ocon was.
Which was the other? It was Russell, sorry. It was Russell.
Yes, yeah.
You might be getting DSQ'd anyway. We'll get onto that as well. So they've all pulled off under their own steam. And I'm not buying this argument of, they're playing follow the leader. They are their own people. They're intelligent. They know the rules in their own separate way. It's up to them. As you heard with Max Verstappen's radio go, why are we driving off? This is not the rule set. It's an aborting start. We have to wait here. And obviously over the radio, you hear GP goes, yeah, it's a real mess. we understand, but you're going to have to go. And I think he fairly had to go because Lando Norris was starting to come around the back of the track. And if he's just standing still on a wet track in the middle of the racetrack, he's becoming more of a hazard than going at that point. So fair play to the back end of the grid who were really sat there. You saw Bottas just sitting there. Both the Haases were sat there. Verstappen was as well. So each driver has their own free will. I'm not buying any story of they follow Norris. You make your own choice. But clearly the wording needs to be clearer. It needs to be more understandable. And I do think, unfortunately, that at least those first 3 or 4 cars are going to pick up some kind of penalty. And I can't really argue against that because it's not like this is brand new. It's not like they've never heard the words before. The teams will understand these regulations. So I think it might be a team fine. I think because of multiple teams breaking the rules, I think they're all going to get fined for a safety breach. But I think a penalty is coming their way regardless.
Harry, what do you think?
I think this is a classic case of Formula One being overly complicated for no reason.
It's a good book, that is.
There are so many. Not that I've ever read the rule book, but I am aware of it. There are quite a few things in it that for teams to remember these days. I look. It's still on them to know these rules, but it's slightly ambiguous because often when there's an aborted start, you do an extra formation lap, but there was no communication that it was an extra formation lap. It just said aborted start, but there's nothing to say what comes next. I think one of the main issues I have is that other motorsports, forms of motorsport, Formula E, WEC, they have like direct lines from the race control that goes to all the teams and says, we're doing this now. That would solve literally everything in this scenario. It would solve things around issues we have around VSC and red flags and crap like that, which I'm sure we'll get onto at some point.
Oh, we will.
But that was all it would take is, and I know the teams they can radio the stewards and the radio race control, but just a one public, or at least for the teams at least, but a public radio line that is just all teams, be aware. We're aborting this start. Please stay on the grid. Boom. Done. Tick box. We're not going to have any confusion because that's just ridiculous. And aside from the fact that, it was some drivers not realising what the rule was when it was particular lights, obviously some did. Verstappen was clued up on it, as were a few others. But aside from that, it's just dangerous because those cars that were confused and went off again, I know they weren't flying off down the circuit. It was another formation lap, and they were under double wave yellows. But Lance Stroll, for some unbeknownst reason, was just stood on the edge of the gravel trap. Why?
I was literally like, walk off,
move away,
walk to the wall.
Just go away.
Why is he there to begin? Why is he in the gravel to begin
Sorry,
with?
we just talk about the fact that obviously, firstly, he hits the wall, which is terrible as it is, and then I love the cut.
I'll allow the wall.
Yeah,
I'll allow it.
Right, and then the hilarious cutaway. Few seconds pass. You cut back. How is he 60 feet away now in the gravel on his own?
I'd forgive.
Have you seen the replay?
No.
Have you not?
No, I haven't seen it.
He just tries to do a donut, flips around, just drives into the gravel.
Oh, for God's sake, man.
I would forgive that if it was a whole gravel trap and he was like you get gravel traps with verges of grass on the edge and he's just stuck on the edge and he tries to flip around and it just doesn't happen. I'd forgive it, but just reverse. You've got all the tarmac behind you. Just reverse.
Yeah, just wait till it's clear. Go backwards.
Honestly,
sure.
I know we're not having a Lance Stroll topic here, but Felipe Drugovich, of course, his home Grand Prix. He's there that weekend. He has to watch that. And that's the reason I'm not racing.
That scene where Lance has walked back in qualifying after putting the car in the wall and he's looking at the data on the wall and Drugovich is just arms crossed behind him. Like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do?
That was derailed.
No, okay. I was going to say one last thing on that. We obviously don't condone violence here, but I think after that, each mechanic that had to rebuild his car are allowed to give him one dead arm each.
Wherever they choose.
Yeah, just one smack on the arm.
That's for Brazil.
Anyway, but my point was there, for some unbeknownst reason, Lance Stroll was still on the edge of the gravel trap. There was also a digger in the area, and we still have cars going past. And I know, again, they were slowly, but it wasn't under like a safety car delta, so they could be going faster and some could be going slower. So that in itself, the confusion has led to what could be a potentially dangerous situation. I just think they could make things so much clearer and easier for all the teams and drivers, and it's also just farcical. Imagine you tuning into F1 for the first time, like, oh, it's an exciting weekend, this looks fun, and you'd be like, what the hell is going on? Carlos Sainz just sat at the end of the pit lane going, I've got no idea what's going on. Why am I here?
Someone make the meme, the community meme, where you're walking, everything's on fire, and there's all the things happening. As a new fan.
Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous, the whole thing, and could be easily solved.
Yeah. It's just unnecessary. Like, it's not what we tune in. It's not what we tune in for. It's not what anyone tunes in for. And we are somewhat lucky here in that, see, Verstappen's won this Grand Prix, and the two Alpine drivers are on the podium. We could have very easily, in an alternate version of this Grand Prix, sat here not knowing the winner. Which, after such an exciting Grand Prix, so many safety cars, overtakes, incredible moments, to be able to not really know the end result. There was such elation from all three members of the podium today, which is rare. We don't always get that. That would have been somewhat subdued if all three of those were under investigation for this very thing that we're discussing. We're somewhat lucky that that's not how it's actually turned out to be. I agree with what you said in the first instance, Sam, of how Norris going and making his decision, the fact that others have followed, should have no bearing on whether they get a penalty or not. He's not a safety car. They are able to make their own decisions. They interpret the rules themselves. And of course, many did and decided not to go until they were told you'd have to go now because it's going to be unsafe otherwise. And very simply put, there was no green light. The light was what color? Yellow, which means you don't go. But apparently some teams and drivers didn't understand that. But I agree with what you said, Harry. Just simple message. Okay, we're aborting the start. No additional formation lap. Done. There's no confusion at that point. Everyone knows they have to stay where they are. But instead it's language that can be misconstrued and clearly you can have different interpretations of. It's just unnecessary.
What baffles me with this as well is, in Formula E, as I mentioned, they do this. They go to all teams and drivers, this is going to happen now. And you'd be like, oh, well, that's a different series. The FIA are the stewards in that series as well. The same people.
But they were so late to abort it anyway. I don't understand why they wait, because I remember 2/3 of the way through the lap, you could say it's aborted because he's not going anywhere in that time. But they waited until they were all on the grid before aborting it, pretty much. It was just unnecessary.
Well, I think that set up the full theme for the whole weekend, that so many safety decisions were made at awful timings and took too long. You had the complaints in the sprint race between the VSC being brought out for the McLaren pass. And I don't think there is a conspiracy against Max Verstappen for Lando Norris, but I totally understand how, if you're a fan of one and not of the other, you might misconstrue this as, how come that was a VSA the moment this pass happened conveniently and it took forever? And then a red flag for Max Verstappen, 40 seconds though after, because every car should finish their lap. Stupid rule. And then a safety car which comes out 30, 40 seconds after a crash has happened in the race. Terrible timing. Honestly, the amount of time it took to make so many key and important safety decisions, no driver's lap, form, whatever, should take priority over safety. You pull the pin immediately. I'd always rather you over-escalate. I'd always rather you overdo the safety to make sure everyone's okay. They go, oh, we'll just wait a minute, see if everyone's okay. See if I keep going. No, Hulkenberg was walking down the bloody side of the track at one point. And this has been a weekend of bad calls and near misses, I think. And I think in these conditions, I think we got quite lucky.
Before we go to our second break, obviously we've got a lot to cover today, but of all the things that we need to cover, this is the thing I'm most excited about. Listeners of the podcast will know that in midweek before a race, in our preview episodes, we have bold predictions that typically we don't get many of them right. Let's rattle through two of these.
Yeah, let's do it.
I need to go. Can I go?
No,
right. Be quiet, please. Wait till the end. Thank you. I think, Ben, mine was an exaggeration of yours, essentially, that Verstappen and Norris in both racing events, so the sprint race and the full race, would come together at DNF. Obviously, it didn't happen. It was bold. It didn't happen. But I could be wrong because it was, these collisions happen all the time. It's fine.
Most weeks I would choose to focus on that more, but we've got more pressing things to attend to. My one is that Lando Norris and Max Verstappen would cause each other to DNF in the main race today, which impressively, Max Verstappen got by Lando Norris to win this Grand Prix, yet never met him on track. Like, I don't understand. Come on. Anyway, I can move past that because, Harry, you predicted that there would be a black flag for Max Verstappen in the Grand Prix. Now, we have not had a black flag in a Grand Prix since 2007.
17 years ago.
I was 11 years old.
The last time a black flag appeared in F1, Kimi Antonelli was not 1 year old.
Who did we get a black flag for, Meg?
There was a black flag for the first time in 17 years for Nico Hulkenberg. If you had just predicted there would be a black flag, that would have been more than bold enough.
Ooh.
Yeah, but then there wouldn't have been one, would there?
Fair point. But come on.
The chances of that are so slim.
Yeah, it's statistically unlikely, isn't it?
I was on stream when that text came through, and I was in tears laughing at how hilarious that is. I was losing it.
Am I still winning bold predictions, by the way?
You are. I think it's like 4-2-0.
Isn't that a shock to literally everyone listening right now? How is that a thing?
That is a shock.
I've got no idea.
I can't believe Ben hasn't got one right yet. Talk about near misses.
I've got like 14 half right.
That's true.
Which, if you add all those together, I've basically got 7.
If we allowed a race either way subsidy, you would be on like 7, correct?
I am going to deploy last goal wins for Abu Dhabi, by the way.
All right, fine, fair enough.
It's going to be worth 10 points.
Right, good.
Last goal wins.
Anyway, for the sake of everyone's abaci that they've got all around the world, keeping track of these scores, you don't need to move anything today. 3 wrong out of 3. We're going to take our next break. On the other side, we've still got plenty of incidents to run through and also a qualifying session.
This is already 3/4 of an hour long.
I'm exhausted.
Welcome back, everyone. There were more than enough incidents to keep us occupied today that we're not going to be able to talk about anywhere near all of them, but there were a few that brought out 10-second time penalties, and we'll have a look at those. Firstly, Oscar Piastri, he picked up a 10-second penalty that ultimately cost him a position at the end. He finished 7th on track, but finished 8th after this penalty behind Yuki Tsunoda. It was actually Yuki Tsunoda's teammate that he collided with, Liam Lawson, earlier in the Grand Prix. Sam, a fair penalty this time around?
I think this one is fair, yes. Completely misjudged it. Runs into kind of the lower third of the car, spins him off. And you know what? Fair play to Piastri during the red flag. He walks down the pit lane and apologises to Liam Lawson. And I don't think Lawson was best pleased, but he made the effort. He claimed he made a mistake and he went and kind of dealt with his mistake personally. And I respect that. But this one, yep, slam dunk, 10-second penalty.
Harry, would you agree?
Yeah, a rare L from Oscar Piastri. We've commented and complimented how clean he is as a racer. This was just a bit scrappy. You could tell, I think he just got his braking wrong and was like, might have to make this into a move. No, I haven't. And it just went wrong for him. The gap closed. So, like you say, Sam, fair play for him holding up his hands. But yeah, very, very fair penalty.
Yeah, I haven't really got anything else to add on that. It was not a good move. The contact was fairly definitive, and I agree with a 10-second time penalty. By the way, we're talking through incidents here, just while I remember. We're going to have to try to, tomorrow, put all of these drivers into power rankings. I've got no idea how we're going to do this based on everything that happened, but if you're enjoying today's review, absolutely make sure you're part of our Patreon, because that power rankings episode will come out tomorrow, and there could be some real disagreements in terms of this scoring.
Could we just give them all 5s and I'd be done with it? That what?
No.
Oh, okay, fine.
You should really subscribe, folks. We're going to give them all 5.
Well, you know what mine's going to be. So
Great use of money.
Harry, what are you going to give Fernando Alonso? 5. Yeah, nice.
No analysis on his race either.
Yeah, just 5.
It was a real 5 of a race, wasn't it?
He's a great guy. 5.
The other incident I definitely wanted to pick up on was Bearman and Colapinto. Bearman got a 10-second time penalty for this. He ran into the back of him in the middle sector. Sam, penalty, no penalty, too harsh? What do you think?
Is this a joke? Serious question. Is this a joke? It might be.
10-second time penalty.
It might be one of... Max Verstappen getting murdered, Lando Norris in Mexico. Just kept driving. Just kept on going. He was determined. Ollie Bearman nibbled. I've had smaller bites of foods I don't like as a little taste test, and I was fine. No penalty over here. Ollie Bearman is being sent to the gulag, apparently, for slightly misjudging an entry zone. Colapinto's like, oh, must be a bump in the road. Anyway, see you later. Off I go. Bearman's like a Beyblade down the back of the hill here. 10 seconds. And he comes over the radio and goes, nothing happened. I barely touched him. He lost no time. 10 seconds? Are you mad? No. It's a joke. It's a joke of a penalty. It should have been a racing incident. And the fact that, they then investigated Liam Lawson for bumping tyres with Lewis Hamilton later on, which is, I would argue, the same level of contact, and that wasn't a penalty, is just hilarious. The inconsistencies in penalties need to be sorted out once again. This was terrible. A joke of a penalty.
Harry?
Yeah, odd one. Fine for them to have a look at it, but it was not even like he wasn't even attempting to overtake him. He just caught mid-corner speed for Bearman was way more than clearly Colapinto had, whether Colapinto just made a slight error, bit of understeer, don't know. And he's just misjudged it. But he's the one who spun. Like, Colapinto just, as you said, Sam, just drove off the road. Like, oh, what was that? I don't know. Yeah, so a penalty in itself is harsh. Giving a 10-second penalty, which is equivalent to, and maybe this speaks to whether the penalties in Mexico for Verstappen were harsh enough, but that's the equivalent to that, and the equivalent to Piastri and Lawson, which, again, that was an attempted move, and obviously it cost Lawson dearly versus Colapinto here, who, again, was fine. So, a very strange decision. Not sure why that's warranted a 10-second penalty. Fine to look at it, but a 10 seconds that's harsh. Very, very harsh.
I thought it was a 5-second penalty. I'm fine with them penalising it, but 10 seconds was too harsh for me. And you refer to the Verstappen and Norris incident from Mexico, and my view on that is that what we saw today between Piastri and Lawson was a 10-second penalty. The Bearman one was 5 seconds. And then whatever happened, the murder that happened last week is more than 10 seconds, whatever, drive through, stop, go, whatever you want to give it. But that's kind of the ladder, I guess, of penalties that I viewed. I think, again, I always preach that I don't think you should penalise based on what the outcome is. That there could have been a scenario there where Colapinto does pick up minor damage. We've seen it before where minor damage happens from a real limited amount of contact. The one that immediately springs to mind is turn one at Monaco earlier this year where Carlos Sainz picks up damage. In which case, does he deserve a penalty then? And my answer is that you should get a penalty or not get a penalty regardless of what that outcome is. So I'm fine with 10 seconds was too much for me, but I think 5 seconds is okay because it was... I still think it was an error from Bearman to go into the back of him. They're not racing side by side, as was the case with Lawson and Hamilton a little bit later on. This is just an error of going into the back of another car. So 5 seconds would have been fine for me. 10, I thought, was harsh. Should we at least have a chat through what happened in qualifying earlier today? It's been a disjointed weekend in terms of session times. We did a review on Friday. We did a review yesterday, but only talking about the sprint. Of course, we haven't done a review of qualifying today because there was only a couple of hours between the qualifying session and the Grand Prix itself. Did you have, Harry, any main takeaways from that session?
I can't remember what happened.
Amazing that it is today.
I know.
It was so long ago.
So long ago. Any main takeaways from this? Obviously, Norris was good in Q3. He sort of fumbled his way through the session and got away with it. And Russell too, as already mentioned, was impressive in qualifying. Verstappen. A rare error in terms of he didn't get the lap time in, and then with that red flag, questionable timing of the red flag, couldn't get another one in afterwards, but others could get that across the line. So, yeah, that I think the amount of mistakes from drivers out there, I mean, proved how treacherous it was. As you said, was it 5 red flags in the end for that session, which is yeah, even qualifying couldn't even run on time, even though it had been moved already. It just went on forever, and then we had to do the race as well. But yeah, it was an expensive afternoon for some teams, Williams and Aston Martin in particular. James Vowles looking at his entirety of his driver lineup in the wall.
Are they the biggest losers from this weekend? Because
Williams.
They had some momentum from the last few Grand Prix, right? And now they've just seen their closest rivals get 33 points. They've had a combined, 4 crashes. Like, it's just an awful weekend for them.
That engineer's face.
Poor guy. Yeah, and I saw Albon, until they actually say what it was, but Albon saying they're still looking into the cause of that crash. I'm like, I just think you locked up the guy.
You're the cause.
Yeah, I just think that was on you. But it was an expensive mistake, especially considering he was got into Q3 and was going so damn well. If he had started the race,
P2 at the time.
It was P2 at the time. Yeah,
P2 at the time.
That Williams had good pace in the wet, and Colapinto until he pasted it against the barrier again this afternoon. Had pretty good pace as well during the race. So and Albon looked quicker than him for the majority of the weekend. So had Albon actually had a car to race with this afternoon, this could have been a big day for them. And yeah, it all unravelled in quali. So yeah, they were the big losers. Aston Martin obviously didn't do well, but they did manage to get both cars into the race, which Lance didn't care about. And Sainz as well, which off the back of what was a great win in Mexico, didn't have a great afternoon. Didn't have a great day out there because he too backed it into the barriers twice. So yeah, it's quite weird. Mainly the ones that crashed in quali are the ones that crashed again during the race. Alonso being the only exception, he only just about made it through.
Yeah, he tried his best.
He gave it a good go. Yeah,
gave it a good go.
What did you make of qualifying earlier today, Sam?
Chaotic, long, painful, bizarre. No, I agree with all the points that Harry's made. I'll try and pull out something different. Lewis Hamilton, mate, I don't know what you're doing at the moment. The fact that your teammate has managed to stick it on the front row, and I get that setups are different, but I've said this about Perez, and I've said it. I think that feedback is fair. Perez also not doing a great job, of course, but at least he was right behind his teammate at this time. The fact that Hamilton is out in Q1 and Russell with the same machinery is on the front row, and it wasn't even close. Like Bottas got into Q2. Hamilton was out qualified by Valtteri Bottas. And remember, they're not teammates anymore. No. He's in a toaster. And whilst Lewis Hamilton is the biggest whinge bag going at the moment, the fact that nothing works, the car is horrible, it bounces and my back hurts, man. He's still not able to extract any performance that George Russell is able to. He's making himself look like a bit of a fool at the moment. And I think Russell now takes the lead in the Drivers' Championship. I think he's finally moved ahead of him. Yep. Which is, Russell deserves it this season. Hamilton has been very down with a couple of peaks, whereas Russell has been consistent with some bad luck. And this qualifying, I think, showed it again. I don't really want to see Hamilton do the last 3 Grand Prix because it just feels like a real shadow of his former self. It's really, really poor. He was by far my biggest disappointment. He didn't bin it, but I bet he wishes he had because then he'd have some kind of excuse for just being that bad. Yeah, it's been terrible. His qualifying usually his biggest strength. Awful.
I'm going to ask this question rhetorically now, but I might well ask it non-rhetorically in a future episode. At what point do we become slightly worried about Hamilton next year going up against Leclerc? Because if it's
right now, I'm worried for him.
Yeah. If it's very Mercedes, this car specific, then okay. But it's been a really, really tough run for him. And today was no better than it has been over the last few Grand Prix for him. As you say, qualifying was incredibly chaotic. It's difficult to assign too many verdicts because otherwise we'd be here for 4 hours. But, I think, and I guess this applies to the weekend as a whole, McLaren have caught so many breaks this weekend and they haven't taken advantage of it. Lando Norris really struggled to get through that first Q1 session. He could have been out with the likes of Hamilton and Verstappen would have been near him on the starting grid. He really does escape Q1 and he does a good job from there on, don't get me wrong. But that plus how they manage the sprint, I just think they've had some luck this weekend and not taken advantage of it, which of course is not what you would like to do. Of course, we had 5 drivers go off during qualifying. It would be easy to point blame. I think when a quarter of the best grid in the world make errors in a 1 hour session, you can probably point to the conditions and say they were pretty tough. A lot of the experienced drivers were really struggling. So I'm not going to be too critical on any of those crashes in particular. But yeah, in terms of the FIA, you've already referenced it, Sam. I thought they handled the session horrendously. And look, I know Verstappen and his camp aren't very happy about when one of those red flags came out and how it led to their Q2 elimination. It didn't. It was pretty much instantaneous that as soon as the crash happened, as soon as the flags appeared, that's when Verstappen was demoted to 11th. That's just bad luck. But I do, even if he's saying it for his reasons, I agree with what he's saying in that it should have been almost instantly called, and it wasn't. I don't agree with finishing the laps and when you're making a safety call, you're making a safety call. Like you're not thinking about anything else. You are just prioritizing the safety of drivers, and all of these other factors should not make an appearance in your decision making. We saw countless times, a long time between actually making a decision. And I know you'd like to see if a car has the potential to get out of a barrier, and Lance Stroll thumped that wall, man. He wasn't going anywhere. Rear wing and front wing were dead. Call it. You can call that. And I think that wasn't the only incident. There were later on with Alonso, they were right on it, but they should have been far quicker with some of the calls they made.
On the that red flag incident that Verstappen was very angry about, his little hand gesture, by the way, in his post-interview was fantastic. It was the classic, stop it. Leave me alone. Don't talk about that anymore. I'm sick of it. Friend of the podcast, Corinne Chandok, if you haven't got the Sky TV feed, he was so adamant about, it's right to let drivers finish their lap. If they weren't affected by the yellow flag, it's right. They're not in the zone. Which I understand, but there are other cars going around the track that are in the zone or about to enter that zone or are currently going through that zone where a driver might be getting out of the car or hit debris. I was really disappointed by his analysis that the session should carry on for what? 30 seconds, a minute? Where's the cutoff? As we said on the podcast, as Ben rightly pointed out, the safety issue is a safety issue. You've got a red flag for a reason. There's a driver out on the track, throw the red flag. I was really disappointed both with the handling and actually with the fact that some of the broadcast teams seemed quite happy that was the way the process had been run.
I don't buy that either because, like you said, there are still cars in the zone, and Jules Bianchi fell off the road under a safety car at Suzuka. So it doesn't matter if you're not on a hot lap, you can still fall off the road. As Lance Stroll proved this aftertain. He's on a formation lap, he fell off the road.
What stopped someone falling off the road while Lance Stroll just stood there?
Well, that's that was.
Why won't someone else do it?
That's my point. Yeah, it was part of my point earlier. I think that was just silly. So, yep. Bad.
Yep, bad. Great summary there from Mr. Harry Eade. This might be the latest we've ever got to these segments in a race review, but it is time for Driver of the Day.
The verdict is in. You're the driver of the day. You're the driver of the day. You're good at driving.
Sam, who was driver of the day?
Well, after a combined, I think it's 7 hours of F1, if you include the recording of this podcast today. So it's a long time. I've come to the conclusion that Max Verstappen is the driver of the day. And it's as simple as that. So thank you, Max, for making it just so easy at the end because, it's been a tough day. But there's plenty of great drivers. So if you guys happen to pivot, fair, because there are some great contenders on this one.
Harry?
Just going to say, can we clarify? It's actually technically driver of the race, isn't it? Because of the day which encapsulates.
Very good point.
And people will come for us. Yeah. They will.
Harry loves the technicality.
Thank you. Off a legend who recommended you. George Russell's a great shout earlier on. Ocon, Gasly, yes, but no, I can't look past Verstappen today. He was outrageous.
I'm going to give it to Ocon.
The bacon always gets you, doesn't it?
I've got this written down so I don't forget it. He finished second in an Alpine.
Fair play. Yeah. He led in an Alpine for quite a while.
Man led in an Alpine. We have roasted that car, that team, all season long. It would be wrong of me to not at least consider him for driver of the day. Verstappen, Gasly, Russell were all phenomenal, and I wouldn't really take it away from you if you picked any of them, but I'll give it to Ocon.
Do Alpine have the same amount of double podiums as Mercedes this year now? I think Silverstone might be the only double they had.
They had Spa, but then obviously Russell got DQ.
Well, yeah, so I can't count that. So yeah, yes. I think so.
Let's go with yes.
Yeah. So I've just realised as well, they made a point about how it's Team Enstone's first double podium for 11 years. And that's still a shorter amount of time since we've had a black flag.
We're going to be less bold to predict that.
Oh, no.
Right. There might be a lot of contenders for this one. Worst driver of the day.
Get in the bin. Worst driver of the day. Bin. Worst driver of the day. You suck at driving.
And to be clear, this isn't worst driver of the day. This is worst driver of the race. But Harry, what are you going with?
Goodness me.
First. Thank God for that.
Look, there are a few contenders here. Zhou Guanyu. And only because Fernando Alonso fell off the road with about 15 laps to go, spun around on the grass and still caught him up again and overtook.
That shot of Bearman being off, and in the background, the Sauber is also off, is hilarious.
That's excellent as well.
Was he driving? I can't say this non-horribly. Was he driving?
I don't know, Zhou, were you
I
there?
think he was walking.
There may have been a cat driving the car, to be honest.
Yeah, so he's a contender. Hamilton, I know he still finished 10th, but Hamilton felt like he just had an afternoon of it. He was off the road many times. And I feel harsh giving this, and it's not really a criticism of the guy at all, because he was brought in last minute, but Ollie Bearman,
was tough, but wasn't your day.
This just wasn't your day, and I feel tough. I feel bad because he was brought in, last minute. I know he's had a couple of races, but still, it's pretty tough, and it was a tough weekend to drive. But he just, from the Colapinto spin onwards, he didn't cover himself in glory. To be honest, it just seemed to, it was all a bit too much for him. But he'll learn from this, I'm sure. But yeah, he wasn't great out there.
Another power rankings plug here, but looking at the list of drivers, I can see quite a few drivers that aren't going to get above maybe 3 or 4 tomorrow. Sam, who was worst driver of the day?
We are first ever 0 a week ago, so there might be some that get there. The fact that you've said Hamilton and not Perez absolutely blows my mind. The fact that Perez finished behind Hamilton, sprang on his own on the first lap.
At this point, it's just like that's just what happens.
Just don't just ignore him now. He's just not there.
Yeah.
Hamilton deserves a shout, but at least he got back to points. I think Norris deserves a shout. He went from pole to 6th place.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, but worst driver.
Hold on. I'm not giving it to him. I'm just saying he's up there. All right. The guy fell off the track twice in key areas. He missed the start again. Everything was bad from him. He didn't overtake a soul on the racetrack.
That's a lie. He overtook Piastri.
That was pretty good.
I put my hands
Scintillating move.
Actually, what? Maybe put me driver of the day. Zhou Guanyu's a fair shout. Ollie Bearman's terrible. But I'm going to give it to Lance Stroll, who can't even make it to the start line.
I genuinely forgot. Well, he wasn't in the race, was he? But that's a valid point.
Yeah, I've also got Lance Stroll.
Boy can't even get round once.
There were some pretty awful performances out there. I think the likes of Bearman, Zhou Guanyu, Carlos Sainz.
Oh, Sainz as well. Yeah.
Can probably thank that Lance Stroll did what he did, because he made it somewhat automatic before the race even started. So Lance Stroll for me. Big brain Strat. What have you got, Harry?
I think who you're asking, though.
Yeah.
Ferrari.
It's good to be back. So pleased you're here. After 2 great races, they're back with a bang with their Charles Leclerc early pit stop.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
They literally said, Karun Chandok said this in commentary. They've got a guinea pig and Carlos Sainz back there who can do your testing for you. He's not scoring points unless something ridiculous happens. Use him. And they immediately pit Leclerc instead. Why?
And am I going to give them fairness here? A little bit of fairness to Ferrari. if they'd done that for Carlos Sainz and discovered Sainz had pretty good pace and then pit Leclerc, and it was just the traffic was the issue, they would have still been in the same spot.
True.
That could have happened.
True.
We have seen a few times previously that fresh inters can absolutely dominate this kind of inter-slick tyre that appears
Certainly
sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, but I just thought, why are you the ones to go first here? Why? There's no need. There's just no one was forcing your hand on this apart from yourselves.
I've kind of got two that I'll mention. My honourable mention, firstly, is that Liam Lawson's strategy for letting Verstappen by versus his strategy for letting Perez by.
Yeah.
The man knows who not to annoy within the Red Bull system. Let's put it that way. The one I will give it to, though, the big brain strat comes from the ever-giving team radio of one McLaren, which was... When Norris gets by Piastri, they're very aware that Piastri has a 10-second penalty. So they advised Lando Norris, who was behind Charles Leclerc, to make sure that he pushes up to Charles Leclerc, which Lando Norris very rightly asks at that point, "What do you think I'm doing?" They are the kings of unnecessary radio calls. Like, what earth else is he going to be doing?
What was the other one? Which was the got some really tough things to say here over the. Why have you made it so dramatic, man? No one's died.
I forgot how much
It's
that's
a bloody
me.
tyre message about rain. Get on with it.
Got some bad news to break to you. Probably thinks like something awful's happened back home.
I know this is big brain, but just honourable shout out for radio messages. Lewis Hamilton this morning with this damn car, man.
It doesn't work, man.
Did you see his radio message about Esteban Ocon?
No.
Oh no, what did he say?
He asked Pete Bonington, "Is that Ocon in first?" And Pete Bonington goes, "Yep." And he says something along the lines of, "Damn, that's good for him."
For him, good job, mate.
That's like not meant to be, but savage.
It's like a
Well done, chap.
backhanded burn.
good job for him, or something along those lines. But yeah,
God.
big brain strat from you, Sam.
I'm going with and in theory, should have worked, the call to go onto the wet tyres for the likes of Perez, for it to immediately not work and then have to be so far back in the pecking order.
Sonoda holding on to third and then put on wet tyres.
That's the right thing. The weather gets worse. He's put on the right tyre. It's worse for him.
Yeah.
No. Right, we will take our final break on this episode. Just one more segment, and that is Moment of the Race. Welcome back to the final part of today's review of the Brazilian Grand Prix. We now have Moment of the Race. We do have, of course, Discord submissions coming up very shortly. Before we get there, we each have to try and find just one, maybe, moment of the race. Sam, what have you got?
This really made me laugh, and I nearly put it as my big brain strap. I wanted to save it for moment of the race. So, Carlos Sainz is on intermediate tyres, and over the radio, you suddenly hear, "Ricky, these aren't the new intermediate tyres. What tyres are these?" And then he ends it perfectly with, "Hello."
And we don't hear a response.
No response.
Just ignoring him.
Oh, it just got me. Hello.
Hello.
5 laps later, crashes the car.
Yeah, well, I'll show you, Ricky. I'm not doing this
Yeah, I think
anymore.
he just did it because he was annoyed.
These tyres are rubbish in the wall.
Hello.
You say hello. That's Sepia. Hello.
Remind me to get that on the soundboard.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Harry, you're somewhat known for having like 5 of these moment of the races anyway. On a day like today, I assume you've got like 50.
God, it's not a list.
Here we go.
It's got a list.
No, it's not that many. I said this to you before we started, but the first on my list is what set the tone for the race, which is the grid animation or grid order animation just not working. Got to P17 and went, do you know what? I don't know.
I don't understand. I'm having a day off. See you later.
I'm out. I've just written Stroll. We've covered that, but yeah.
Nice.
Verstappen start with flame emojis because, yep.
Filthy.
Put the 10-second penalty thing with Bearman, but we covered that already. I know Hamilton just been off the road, but Franco Colapinto planting one on Lewis Hamilton into the centre S, which was actually pretty filthy. I also enjoyed the crowd going wild for Franco Colapinto. Now, I know they're very close by, but he is Argentinian, not Brazilian. And it just made me laugh because I know the Brazilian fans love Lewis Hamilton. He's an honorary citizen. But when it's still one of their own South American blood, we'll cheer for him. It doesn't matter who you are, Lewis. We'll cheer for Colapinto. So that one got me panning to the Williams mechanic after Colapinto then crashed, which was... Yeah.
That poor team.
It was just him rubbing his forehead like, I can't do this anymore.
I can't put that car back together.
I can't do it again. Fair play to the Williams drivers, by the way, because they didn't have small crashes. They did it properly. They did it properly this weekend.
They wiped those cars along the wall, didn't they?
Yeah.
They could have not.
They could have not. They could have not, but at least
I would argue they did.
They were committed.
They definitely did.
You know what? This is why we don't have qualifying on a Sunday, because with that we lost Albon. We could have lost more. Shows you that it probably doesn't work very well.
Then I had hello from Carlos. But the one I've settled for, which was late on in the race, and I just feel sorry for the guy, but Fernando Alonso.
Oh my God.
The radio message is so good.
I mean, bleak, but so good. Like, and I respect him. Like, I'm finishing this race for the mechanics. But it was the way, because his back was in pain from the bounce. I've seen onboards actually. That car was bouncing a lot. Like, no wonder
his surfacing was terrible.
Yeah, but it was the way he said, "But my," and as he said the word "back," he obviously like went over a bump and it jarred. He went, "But my back." He's like, "My back."
Him and Lewis Hamilton are
exactly. And I've seen a great meme of it's of Arnold Schwarzenegger and oh god, who's the other person? But I'll send it to you guys. But they're just like two old men lying in the hospital beds, and that's Hamilton and Alonso.
Yes.
I think Stroll just crashed on the first lap.
He's like, I'm not doing this.
He wants to protect his back.
Yeah, I mean, valid. There's something really wrong with that ride of that car around that circuit. But yeah, a lot of contenders. But I'll settle with poor Fernando and his poor back.
I have decided to go for, on a day that there were so many brilliant comedic moments and ridiculous moments, I felt it was necessary to go for something driving related that was just genuinely brilliant. It's one of the ones that Harry mentioned. That start by Verstappen was beautiful. Around the outside of those cars, sometimes the very best in the sport just show us who they truly are. And that was one of those moments. That was brilliant. But what have we got from our Discord? I'm expecting we could get some variety, maybe some of the ones that we've already mentioned. Harry, who are we starting with?
Yeah, thank you everyone for submitting. The first one is from Theek Broncos, and it was submitted at 3:33 UK time, 3:33 PM, which is approximately 3 minutes after the race starts. So I can only imagine what this might be.
Thick Broncos here. Stroll. It will have to be Stroll. Nothing will be funnier in this race than Stroll.
It was that cut back to him in the gravel, man. It really got me. I'm like, sure, he's going. He'll get out of it. Go. It's a great comedic timing moment.
I mean, it was a strong shout, to be fair, but I do think hello is funnier than the Stroll one.
Sorry, that is getting me every time. Hello.
Thank you for that, Thick Broncos. Next up is Steel Wall.
Hey, all, Steel Wool here. Moment of the race was just getting to watch Max Verstappen drive. I'm a certified Verstappen hater, so I was very excited to see his misfortune. And I was really happy the past couple races seeing people go after him, but today he showed a lot of composure and, I mean, just an incredible drive. So, you know, congratulations to him. Love you guys. Keep breaking late.
Listen up, F1 fans. That's how you should be. All of you, be like that. Be like Steel Wool. You can not like a driver, but respect them when they do well. Goodness me.
Be civil.
Nah, British boys.
Good stuff. F1 next. Next up is Dojo Casa House.
Congrats, Ben Hawking, on that double podium. That's my moment of the race.
Yeah, well done,
Mojo Dojo Casa House out. Love you guys.
I love that.
Keep breaking late.
His sign off is actually longer than the submission. Mojo Dojo
It's
Casa
been a
House.
long journey to get to this point. All four of us are going to celebrate this evening. It's going to be great.
Do you just take your glasses off on the pit wall? Because is that how you change your identity?
Yeah, that's when I become henbocking.
I become Ollie Oaks.
Yeah.
Next is Big Easy, who is a first-time submitter. Oh, in brackets, their name is Big Easy Yuki Stan.
Hello, my late-breaking lads and lasses. This is Big Easy, first time, long time. My moment of the race, Alpine. It's the only thing after this whole race that won't be decided 2 hours from now.
Fair.
Sorry. Can you imagine if they both got disqualified?
Oh, imagine.
That'd be the most Alpine thing of all time, wouldn't it?
I just want to take a little moment for Big Easy on the live stream. Every single live stream, Big Easy comes in and he donates 5 subscriptions to other people. That's $25 a go every single time.
Oh, yeah.
A true hero. And so much love to you because that support is amazing. So thank you.
Next is Bristol Liam.
Well, lads, what a day for cars not powered by a Mercedes engine. Moment of the race, probably the thought of Otmar sat in his basement with his 9 kids just crying, watching Alpine have the race of their season. Cheers.
Why is he in the basement?
Please get the kids out the basement, Otmar. God.
Moving on.
Thank you for that, Liam. The one car guy is next.
What up, guys? This is the one car guy. First submission in a while. Sorry, I'm like I've been driving all night. Okay, I've had too many Red Bulls. Moment of the day, moment of the race. Is when Ted Kravitz and all the Sky commentary team knew that Nico Hulkenberg got black flagged, and they were all telling Ted Kravitz, tell him. He's like, no, sure, tell him, not, no, I don't know. That was the funniest thing to me.
Yes.
Bye.
Good shout. I forgot about that.
That was, it's almost like, when you had like a crush on someone at school. Tell him you like them. No, I'm embarrassed. I can't. Hulkenberg's with a big grin on his face. You do cute, mate.
The only thing worse than getting a black flag in a race
being told by Ted Kravitz.
Ted Kravitz live on air. Hello, mate. You're out the race.
I think that's probably the way I would want to be told. It'd be like being cuddled by a bear.
Only if Ted was in his shorts, though.
He's always in shorts, so there's no risk of that.
Perfect. I'm happy.
Next up is Christy.
Christy from Georgia, first time submission, reporting from trackside here in Sao Paulo.
Oh, wow.
Moment of the race today is going to have to be Colapinto doing a full send right into the wall, completely changing the nature of the race. Honorary mention will go to after the restart and Bearman went off into the grass, the camera cut to him and you could just see the green sauber of Joe trundling along in the grass behind him.
Yes.
What an amazing race. Thanks, guys. Keep breaking late.
Amazing. Thanks for submitting it live from trackside. We love that.
Ferret 500 is next.
Great name.
My moment of the race, without a doubt, has to be the contrast in defence between Lawson and Verstappen and Lawson and Perez. Thought it was a very interesting difference and an amazing overtake by Max.
Yep.
Lovely.
Thank you for that, Ferret.
Hey, full name him.
Sorry, thank you for that, Ferret 500.
There's another 499 of them.
Yeah,
you got to know which one we're talking to.
Best of luck in advancing in the rankings, team.
How you get promoted?
That does sound like one of those like rogue NASCAR IndyCar races you got back in the day. The Ferret 500.
Yes, 100%.
Somewhere deep in Ohio.
Yeah. Next up is Tommy K20.
What's going on, Light Breakers? Tommy K20 here. Moment of the race. Forget all the crashes. Forget the double podium by Alpine. Forget the Max comeback. Lance Stroll binning it on the formation lap. I was peeing my pants laughing for the rest of the entirety of that race.
Yeah, good. Good. Question, Tommy K. Do you love tomato ketchup? Is that where your name comes from? Is that a British thing? Do only we call it Tommy K?
Does anyone in the UK call it Tommy K?
Have you heard that before?
Can I have some Tommy K, please?
Yeah, that's the Tommy K.
I have heard of it before. So there's a song that has Tommy K in it.
Culture shock for Harry Eid.
I'm going to have to send this to you.
Good.
Oh, good. And last but very much not least is Just Call Me Rico.
Okay. Hello, Rico.
My name is Alexander. I go by Ryan, but you can just call me Rico. Here with my moment of the race, and for me, it's got to be triple header, 3 for 3 for Burt Mylander. Safety car making that strong comeback, giving us probably the most action of the year in this race. We got 2 DNSs, 2 DNFs, and 1 disqualification. So quite the array of things. Keep breaking late.
Yeah, good to see Bert out about.
I tell you what, he's after not having to do anything for a long time. It's just they were saving it all for this weekend.
Yeah, he's been busy boy.
He went, I'm going to be tired in a few races, so can we just rein it in for a bit, please?
Yeah,
that was the last one.
That was. Thank you, everyone.
Minor miracle. I think we've managed to do this review in under 90 minutes. I wasn't sure we were going to, but we have.
We're just there. Well, yeah. The adverts might make this a 90-minute, but
true, very true. We have plenty more to come, obviously, on the podcast. We've got no race for the next couple of Grand Prix, but we're going to be back midweek. We've got Patreon episodes. We've already plugged Power Rankings today, but of course, start of November, which means we've got a lot of Patreon content still to record throughout the month. Sam, if you wouldn't mind getting us out of here.
Folks, all those links that you want to find are going to be down in the description. You can join our Discord as well. That's got nearly 3,000 members talking every single day about Formula One and lovely many other things. Follow us on social. If you want to see great reactions, memes, silly extra videos that we cut both from Patreon and from this content, then you can. That's Late Breaking F1 everywhere. We're also on YouTube. This has been videoed. So if you want to come and see what we really look like, the biggest reaction we always get, I never thought you'd look like that. We just look like human beings. So come and see what we look like and see if you've envisioned the right people. I'm not actually 1,000 years old. And we will see you for Power Rankings if you're a Patreon subscriber. You can find that down below, or in the midweek where we do our next set of F1 chit chat. Thanks for listening. In the meantime, I've been Samuel Sage.
I've been Ben Hocking.
And I've been Harry Eade.
And remember, keep breaking late.
Hello.
Hello.